Mills rate, what was it? If you decrease it half a point, was it $100,000? $100,000 in the ambulance. We send our kids out that attend the rec center in a van that doesn't have seatbelts. The seniors ride in the same van on their trips. God forbid if something happens to one of them, y'all would make that decision to send them out in that same van without fixing it. Who's liable then? The city is. And I urge you to think about what you are sitting here to do. Is it, even if it's not popular, it's the right thing to do. And all of you, well, not all of you, 3 of you, Travis is telecommunicating here, 3 of you sat in forums, and when you were asked about the finances of the city, one of the things all of you committed to, because I was there, one of the things all of you committed to was making some cash reserves for this city. Here's your chance to do it. If we are able to get the tax digest that Fulton County has put out, which I doubt we will. Thank you.
Thank you, John. More comments on my right? Is there agenda item comments on my left? Okay. It sounds like Councilman Horsley's re-entered the meeting electronically, telepathically, maybe we should get a medium in there. That's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, that will conclude our comments or questions on agenda items. So next item is our consent agenda, and it looks like we only have, we have 2 items on our consent agenda. One is the consideration action on the Transit X LLC MOU that we just talked about, and the second one is consideration action on the resolution to adopt the area ATL Greenway Plan. In our packet tonight is a very extensive report for the Aero Atlanta Greenway Plan that's been on the stove for over a year now. So they're looking for municipalities to take action on that. So I'll open the floor for a motion. Yes, sir.
Meeting one, is anybody from Air Troubles, ATL, CID?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, I'll open the floor to a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion to approve. Discussion?
The only thing for me on the consent agenda is that transit tax. But I would really love to see an actual live demonstration on this.
If you go to Boston, you can see it at the end of this month.
I think the MOU will give us time to explore all of that.
I agree, at some point.
And I think the language of MOU is clear.
Does it give us an out?
Yes.
I mean, clear out, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's no financial obligation.
That's what I want to make sure.
That's the main
Okay.
thing that I'm concerned about. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
The only, this is the gave when I submitted, probably about 30 comments or so to our initial draft review of the ATL Greenway Plan, was that we have a keen focus on Loop Road and or Virginia Avenue as a corridor. So I'm very sure to see the sort of reduction in size of the plan. It's a little bit more easy to digest than one that was almost like 260 pages. But,
Yes.
other than that, it's just, I think we need to constantly be in communication with the CID as it relates to monies that we already have, be it GDOT money for repaving South Central / Porsche Avenue. That's a large section of what this model mile is calling for. How can we sort of have a synergy between those funds, that construction, that engineering, and this plan? But other than that, it's just sort of a content and fully trust and lead a follow through on some of these things as well.
Okay. Any other comments on the consent agenda? There being none, all in favor of approval, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. Affirmative, I'm sorry, Travis. Travis voted in the affirmative. Okay, under old business, we have no old business tonight. Under new business, we have a first reading of rules of procedure ordinance for council meetings. On September 18th, Mayor Holman initiated a discussion on implementing rules for public comments and presentations for council meetings. The city attorney has drafted the attached ordinance to encompass these rules and other pertinent procedures for our meetings. So tonight we have a draft. I have a few questions for legal on this. Line number 58 and 64, Gerald, both say consent agenda. Is that intentional, or should it be one location or the other?
Not intentional, we should strike it.
Okay.
One or the other.
Okay. Line 118, I think the last word should be at instead of and. The council shall make a final decision and its next regular public meeting. I think that should be at its next regular meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Next item, starting at line 165, going to 171, this is a question for council. This states that the entire general comment session shall not last more than 10 minutes unless extended by council. Is 10 minutes enough, or y'all want to look at maybe extending that to 15, or just take it on a case-by-case basis and extend it if it's 30?
I recommend 15.
Okay.
15 is fine with me. A quick question, since you've already gone past these items. This particular draft appears to be the way we are doing it now. Is that intentional, just to give us the information?
Yeah,
There is some language that's similar. There's some additions, specifically the time limitations being one of them, but there are some similar language.
Okay.
because the order of our meetings is kind of dictated by charter to an extent, so.
I just didn't see the public comments grouped at the front like we talked about, but there's some other language that the council clears that up.
Okay, so Travis, you did say you were in favor of the 15 minutes versus 10,
That's correct, sir.
and Alderman Rath, you, and Councilman Alexander, 15 is good with you? So if we could change that section to 15.
Do you want to note on the time limitations, there are other time limitations, other than just the general comment section, if you'd like to revise those as well.
You know, as far as the evidentiary hearings and zoning hearings, we give 40 minutes, that's a lot of time. I think that gives everybody the opportunity. And correct me if I'm wrong, we can waive or add to at any time. So if we feel like we've got a hot topic that needs more time, we could just open the floor for a motion to extend the time.
Right.
Good with that. Any other items that jump out to y'all on this?
Have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Mine's 159 to 163. Basically the sign in, it would be nice if there was an option for someone who maybe had a comment that's generated from something that happened in a meeting or a council comment or another citizen comment that would allow for people to make comments even if they didn't sign up. So there'd be a time limit on that.
So you're saying just,
Only those comments.
Could be, I guess at the end of people who signed up. Like for instance today,
Well, if they comment on something happened in the meeting, we have to be in.
oh yeah, you're right, it's gonna change.
So that's crux of whether we want to change it or not.
Never mind.
and again, if there's something that,
So how would we potentially provide for that clarification if someone has a follow-up question?
And I do think that you're kind of restricting people to express their opinions that they have to sign in. I like the sign in because it's conservation of time.
right, and that was the genesis of all of this, was to be more efficient with our meeting time. anything here, having to have, I mean, if you go to the school board, you have to sign up to speak. If you go to Fulton County, City of Atlanta, any other entity, governmental entity, you typically have to sign up to speak.
So either they can wait to the following meeting, or either send email clarification or question
Or
answer.
come up to one of us after the meeting and ask, just say, hey, I've got a question that came up during the meeting, or speak to staff. So,
What if the time hasn't, if we haven't exceeded the 15 minutes, can we free up?
I would say somebody could make a motion to just open the floor for general comments, and we could free up, say we're gonna open the floor for general comments for 5 minutes. But you could do that on a case-by-case basis, so if it's something, I think what we need is our basic guidelines with the flexibility that we have as elected officials to entertain a motion to either modify those rules or suspend the rules, so we can take comment on
On a meeting by meeting.
on a meeting-by-meeting basis, because if we're gonna talk about a 5 mil tax increase, yes, of course, you want a lot more time for people to make comments about that, but, so. All right, any other, comments on this item?
But you took mine about the ad.
Okay, yeah, just mine. Okay, well, if there are none, that will stand as our first reading of rules of procedure ordinance. One of the other things that this will do as well is create a structure for each type of hearing that we have. For example, a few weeks back, we had a conditional use zoning hearing, and I opened the floor up for comments, but I did specifically say, would the applicant like to address the council? So it being a zoning matter, we want to make sure we follow that hearing procedure to the T. So one of the things I'll be asking our clerk to do once we adopt these is to, as she's done at our last one, is to list the items out check by check, so we make sure we don't overlook something. Because that was a mistake on my part to not specifically ask for the applicant to speak that time. And I think the language barrier contributed to that confusion. So that's one of the other things that when I met with the attorney, we talked about those items being included in this document as well. All right, so if there's no other, if y'all have any other items on that to correct or clarify, just shoot Tim legal an email and let him know. And so with that being said, that will stand as first reading of the procedural ordinance for council meetings. Next item up is consideration of a text amendment to the restaurant ordinance. This is first reading as well. As currently written, the City of Hapeville Municipal Code has restricted restaurants in most zoning codes to full service or to those that exclusively seek patrons. This limited definition provides little opportunity for fast casual restaurants where patrons are served at the counter and seat themselves or take their meals to go. In an effort to avoid the fast food road, the code also restricts drive-through restaurants and does not provide direction should there be an opportunity to accommodate a drive-through window. Given the shifting nature of self-service with and without drive-throughs, the proposed ordinance allows for a simplification of the restaurant definition to include a wide array of restaurants while differentiating for simple carry-out and drive-through restaurants, which may follow the intent of the various zoning districts regarding pedestrian-oriented development. The City Planning Commission considered this item on October 9, 2018, and recommended to the Mayor and Council approve the proposed text amendment. Staff supports the recommendation. You want to speak to that, Dr. Patterson?
Thank you. So our zoning code right now is somewhat restrictive just in the way that it's written, that we only allow for a standard sit-down restaurant in many of our zoning districts, for example, UB. But what we've seen is really there's been a shift in the kind of restaurants and service, carry-out service, et cetera. For example, I'll give you the example of Willie's. You go up, you're served at a counter, you sit. Per our code, I could not approve a Willie's in the city of Hapeville in many of the districts, even the one where it currently exists. And this came up again with Smoothie King. Regardless of the drive-through, I wouldn't even be able to offer Smoothie King an occupational tax permit, approve them for zoning, based on the way that our ordinance is written. So what we proposed and taken to the planning commission, and they gave their input and approved, was basically dividing our definitions into 4 categories. And the first is a restaurant, which is any establishment that prepares and sells food and or beverages intended for consumption on premises, is considered to be a restaurant. Then there are sort of 3 subcategories of restaurants. If you are a sit-down restaurant, I'll just give the example of Volare, then you're a restaurant, period, you don't have to think about it anymore. The second is actually a carry-out restaurant, which is a little bit different, where it's almost like a window. I explained to Planning Commission, I have a Chinese food restaurant in my neighborhood where you can order, you call in, you can order online, and you show up and you pick, there's a couple of seated areas where you can wait for your food, but you cannot actually consume them on premises, you have to take it away. It's not a drive-through, it's a walk-up. You could park and walk up, or you could be walking along the sidewalk and get it. We don't really allow for that in our ordinance for food service like that. So we're proposing that second carryout. The third is a drive-in. Example we talked about at Planning Commission is like a Sonic, where you drive up, you sit in your car, and you consume the food as you're served at your car. Okay? So that's any restaurant that prepares and sells food and or beverages in a ready-to-consume state that is served to parked vehicles for a meeting. And then the last one is restaurants or drive-through. And that's any restaurant that prepares and sells food and or beverages in a ready-to-consume state with a drive-through window or service that includes circulation and stacking for ordering and pickup services to customers and vehicles. You can eat inside of a drive-through restaurant. It's both. It's basically a restaurant with a drive-through. And we've recommended some parking, for example, that you might have a designated space. I think in Chick-fil-A and McDonald's, you can pull up and wait. You can order ahead and still pull up, so kind of a carry-out. So we have designated that you could have 2 spaces per 1,000 for that. Again, we're sort of seeing a shift in the way that food service is carried out, where people are looking for efficiency, but we also really want to maintain the pedestrian orientation in many parts of our city, where you are able to walk safely up to a restaurant or circulate as a pedestrian, as well as being able to accommodate vehicular flow. So the first part of the text amendment, again, is sort of redefining restaurants, which helps me in terms of occupational tax permits. The second part is the zoning component, which really allows us some flexibility in terms of where these categories where you could possibly have each one of these restaurants. So in Urban Village, right now, you do not allow for any kind of a drive-through. We would allow for restaurants or carry-out restaurants, but not a drive-through or drive-in with a maximum of 6,000 square feet. Now, that's by right. Mayor and council could, as you see in the second part of that zoning amendment, is drive-through or drive-in restaurants may be allowed through special permit. That would have to come to mayor and council. And our recommendation is the desired configuration for a drive-through or drive-in restaurant in this district. It's not a standalone building, again, to avoid that kind of fast food row where you've got curb cut after curb cut after curb cut, but rather part of a larger development. And that the site plan specifically addresses pedestrian orientation and safety. So maybe it has multiple uses in it, or it has multiple businesses, and at one end you might have a drive-through. And then we work with the site plan to figure out how not to have stacking onto a main thoroughfare, maybe to pull it off to the side, or minimize stacking, minimize where that drive-through would be located, or drive-in. This same recommendation goes for RMU. I mean, if you look at our urban village, it's a pretty broad, we have a lot of properties zoned urban village that aren't just downtown, right? They go all the way across, almost from, it actually goes from side to side of the city along the main thoroughfares. The RMU, residential mixed use, has a very similar one where you could allow it, and then it becomes mayor and council thinking, and us having a discussion, planning commission having a discussion, and working with site plan, and looking to see if contextually that drive-through works, but it's not by right, drive-in or drive-through. In C1 or C2, We, in the C1 district, the retail, we do have that special permit. C2, we allow it by right. If you want to be in the C2 district, which is really on either end of Virginia and North Central by the highways, that would be by right. And then business parks, we don't actually have anything on business park, and everybody asked me at Planning Commission why we put that in there. We maintain it in case we ever choose to, if we're gonna redevelop a part and we want that zoning district, then that's why we have it. And it could be one that would be applicable, certainly, and that's why we allow it through special permit. And then in downtown development, drive-throughs and drive-ins would not be allowed, only that it would be the carry-out, so the I don't want to call it the window, it's actually it's a business, but you can advance to it and take your food to go, or sit in a park and eat, or take it back home, it doesn't matter. Or that you would sit down and have a meal there. But again, you could be served as a counter. The difference between us and the other is that you could pick up your meal, not self-serve, but sort of self-service, and then go and sit down. You don't have a wait staff. So we had a long discussion with Planning Commission and tried to work that out. They had suggested the differentiation between drive-in and drive-through, because those are a little bit different, so we modified it. And they also had recommended we take out the C, I think it was the C2. They said let them have a place by right to locate a drive-through. And those are the most logical given their proximity to the interstate without advancing that too far into the city. But we certainly do have people from a convenience perspective wanting to be able to have a drive-through. And again, it's not that they aren't allowed, but we would really be looking at those on a case-by-case basis and having a strong discussion about where those should be located. That's it.
No, food halls are more popular, and they are usually pedestrian friendly.
Yep.
Where would that fit in though?
Great
Because
question.
it's like this weird hybrid where it can be a restaurant, but there's not really enough seating to seat everybody, and there's
What
lots
was
of.
that? Did you say food?
Food hall.
Food halls,
Food hall.
Give me an example.
like Frog Street Market.
Okay.
So we would probably categorize those as carryout. Depending, if they had seating internally, it would be a restaurant, but you can do the new food halls or even the sort of the food court idea. There's some micro food courts up by Georgia Tech, et cetera. There you have the carryout, and then there's a common place that the owner, the property owner would have
Common
for
dining
seating.
area.
So it's still, you're not providing seating on location, and they don't necessarily own where the seating is, but you still have access to seating. So I would put that under the carryout, unless you had one of the anchors was a restaurant, and that's okay, then they would still be permitted by restaurant. We're not, wherever a restaurant is allowed, a carryout restaurant is allowed. It's just the drive-through, the vehicular access, those ones that are vehicular dependent, if you will, those are the ones
Need to be very
that
restrictive.
we want to be really cautious about and thoughtful about. Because this community could easily become
Yeah, and that's why years ago, previous council just pretty much banned drive-throughs, period, because we saw that trend coming,
Right.
and we didn't want to become that. So that's why we put just an outright ban on drive-throughs, period.
And things have changed. I mean, people
Yeah.
like to get their coffee.
Right,
They
right,
want
right,
to,
right.
you know,
It is.
using names of companies, but it could be Starbucks, it could be,
Right,
whatever.
right.
Caribou, where they want the quick cup of coffee, and maybe it makes sense in some places, but not in others.
So would each of these examples, in the UB, RMU, C1, to apply for special permits, those would go through the planning commission like the way the process works now for other zoning, and then come to the council?
Yeah, so you'd have a planning commission, a staff recommendation, and a planning commission recommendation, but council would be the final.
On a case-by-case basis.
And we look at it from a planning perspective in context, of what else is going on in that area, and how does it fit, how does that development fit within what the overall planning goals are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Very detailed, thank you.
Question?
Any other questions or comments? Question? All right, thank you. Next item up is human trafficking notice ordinance. This is our first reading. At the October 2nd council session, the mayor and council supported the idea of moving forward with the Hang the Sign challenge to join the fight against human trafficking. Attached is an ordinance providing the compliance with state human trafficking notice requirement. The human trafficking notice includes contact information from the National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline. Additionally, it lists the phone number for the Georgia hotline for domestic minor trafficking. This is an initiative that's kind of being sponsored and led by Fulton County, and they've asked the municipalities to tag along with it. So, any questions on this? If not, this will stand as first reading of that ordinance. Pretty much a boilerplate ordinance, I assume, Tim? Okay. All right. Next item is consideration and action to adjust the 2018 property tax millage rate. At the October 2nd, 2018 meeting, Mayor and Council voted the tax millage rate of 16.44 mils and to change the homestead exemption from 12,000 to 12,000 from 10,000. As a change in the homestead exemption must be enacted through the Georgia General Assembly and a citizen vote, the Mayor and Council are revisiting the millage rate for 2018 property taxes to memorialize their intention and the procedure to change the homestead exemption. So, as that background says, we haven't talked about our homestead exemption in a number of years, and quite frankly, I should have known that, having served in office for 20 years, that you couldn't do that without the legislature's approval on a vote, but I didn't. So we missed the mark on that one. So we're back because that would have given some relief to homeowners, and council wanted the opportunity to revisit that discussion tonight. So, council.
I just want to clarify something. I don't want any resident here thinking that if they send me an email that I don't respond, I'm very responsive in my emails. Every person who sends me an email or even calls me. However, if the method in which I want to share the information doesn't sit well with you, that's something you have to decide whether or not you want to hear what I have to share with you. So, and I say that preface that's because I'm going to go over my rationale as to why I decided not to decrease the millage rate at our last meeting. The first pillar, the reason why I decided not to decrease the millage rate at the last meeting was based on human capital. Our police department and fire department are grossly lagging behind other parts of the metro Atlanta area as far as salary. In addition to that, our attrition rate is tremendously high. Our retention rate is tremendously low. Therefore, at the way that our millage rate or the projected valuation of our homes is set, I think we're positioned to be able to do something about that in order to retain our police officers. We have a 2-minute response time, basically very concierge service here. And if we don't do anything to sustain that, they're going to continue continuously to leave. So that was one of the rationale as to why I decided not to lower the millage rate. Also, equipment, police and fire, their radios are not good. Not only does it put their safety at risk, but it also puts us as citizens and residents here at risk as well. Therefore, being able to support a platform that will allow them to have the equipment that they need to do their jobs effectively and efficiently by not decreasing the millage rate, I'm all for that. In addition to that, we have, I've spoken to employees that have left, chose to terminate their employment here with the City of Hapeville because they feel that a lack of equipment such as tasers, old police cars, do not afford them the opportunity to do their jobs well. That's a problem. Also, we have a fire department ambulance that is well beyond recommended years for replacement, and those are some of our first-line responders. I prefer to be riding in a Cadillac service ambulance versus the one that over here on by Virginia Park, because you don't know if it's going to break down doing your transport to the hospital, or them coming to get you. And lastly, we have a recreation van that needs to be replaced as well. It doesn't have seat belts on it. That also poses as a safety risk, not only for the senior citizens, but also for the kids that we have after-school programs for. Also, our enterprise fund. This year, the city will be afforded the opportunity to not pull from the enterprise fund. We hear a lot of talk about water and sewer, but yet we have a gross concern when we say that we don't want to lower the millage rate in order to allow the general fund to stand independently of the water and sewer fund. Importantly, also, I think that the water and sewer monies can be strategically earmarked for infrastructural changes that we truly need here in the city, that focus on water and sewer issues. And lastly, fiscal responsibility. This year's tax digest has positioned us with the ability to increase our reserves. Our reserves have been bleeding because there's a very disproportionate snapshot of what our home values are appraised at versus what they really are. So that was the most logical reason that I had in order to base my determination to vote no at the last millage rate session. But keep in mind, I was the one that initiated the motion to increase the homestead exemption from 10 to 12, which would afford the opportunity for homeowners to get some incremental fiscal burden relief. That's the reason why I decided not to decrease the millage rate at our last meeting.
Thank you, Councilman Adams. Any other comments on this one?
Yeah, if we're going down the line. Sure. This issue's really been hanging since the budget was adopted in June, so we're 3 months with this item, and obviously tonight it'll be settled hopefully one way or the other. I've stated my preference to leave the millage as is based on the circumstances of the unknowns. It's my belief, I haven't said this previously, but it's my belief that the city has put forward budgets with a 16.44 millage that really were not adequate to fund the budgets. And I would imagine previous councils have been reluctant to raise millage past 16.44 because of the fact that it's one of the higher millage rates, certainly in Metro Atlanta and throughout the state. So there's been a fear that this has been an artificial cap, really, and it's constrained our budgets and has put us in some of the situations that Councilman Adams has described tonight. This is the first year with property assessments beginning to represent values that are more realistic than they have been here for a number of years, where we do project some additional revenues with the millage intact at 16.44. There are still unknowns. We haven't, as Citizen stated earlier, the digest for 17 and 18 are still unknowns. We have projections that we are using on a fact sheet tonight to try to ascertain which rate we need to adopt. I would still